4 prison stories that will keep you awake tonight. I work as a corrections officer in a maximum security prison for over 10 years. I've seen my fair share of violence and madness, but nothing compares to what happened in the solitary confinement wing. This part of the prison was reserved for the worst of the worst, those who couldn't be controlled even within these walls. There was one cell at the end of the corridor, cell 13, which was always avoided by both guards and inmates. People said it was cursed. The story goes that years ago, a prisoner named Jack Foster was placed there after a violent altercation. Jack was known to be tough, unbreakable, but something in that cell broke him. On his second night, guards reported hearing him screaming, pleading for help. They found him cowering in the corner, his eyes wide with terror, muttering about the shadows and the whispers. He claimed that every night he could hear screams coming from the walls. He swore that shadows moved on their own, growing and shrinking like they were alive. The other inmates in solitary could hear him too. Every night, without fail, Jack would scream and beg for help. One night, the screams stopped. When the guards checked on him the next morning, they found Jack dead, a look of pure horror frozen on his face. After that, no one wanted to be put in cell 13. The prison administration tried to move inmates into it a few times, but each one either begged to be moved out or came out worse than they went in. Eventually, they just stopped using it. But even now, every so often, late at night, you can still hear those screams. Some say it's just the wind through the cracks in the old building, but those who've been there know better. I was transferred to work at an old penitentiary that was being repurposed. It had a dark history, riots, suicides, and many executions. One inmate, in particular, stood out among the old records, Marcus Mad Dog Hayes. He was notorious for his violence, even towards his fellow inmates. Rumor had it he had a particular cell where he liked to corner his victims. That cell, Block C, Cell 19, had since been sealed off. The first night of my shift, I was walking the floor when I heard footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw a shadow dart into Cell 19. I thought it was one of the inmates, maybe trying to hide contraband. When I got there, I found the door locked and no one inside. Confused, I chalked it up to my imagination and moved on. The following nights, it happened again and again. Each time, I'd see the same shadow out of the corner of my eye, slipping into Cell 19. It always vanished when I approached. My colleagues laughed it off when I mentioned it, calling it a rookie's imagination. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Then one night, as I patrolled past the cell, I felt a cold breeze and heard a whisper right in my ear, "Get out." I whipped around, but there was no one there. My heart pounded in my chest as I heard a faint, cruel laugh echoing from inside the sealed cell. The next day, I asked around about Cell 19, and one of the older guards told me the story of Mad Dog Hayes. He died in that cell after a riot, bludgeoned by the other inmates. After that, I refused to work the night shift. I didn't want to end up like Mad Dog's victims, cornered in a dark cell with no way out. My father was a warden in a prison that was notorious for its execution chamber, often referred to as the chair. It was rumored that those who died there were so filled with rage and fear that their spirits lingered. Dad didn't believe in ghosts or curses, but he couldn't deny the strange occurrences surrounding the chamber. Inmates and guards alike reported hearing voices, cries, and pleas for mercy coming from the execution chamber late at night, long after the last execution had taken place. Sometimes the chamber would be found unlocked, even though it was always secured after each use. Once, my father entered the chamber to find the chair turned towards the door, as if someone had been waiting for him. The final straw came when a guard named Harris, who was tasked with preparing the chamber for a new inmate, vanished without a trace. The last anyone heard from him was a frantic call over the radio, screaming that he saw someone in the chair, someone who shouldn't have been there. When backup arrived, they found the chamber empty, the chair still warm to the touch, and Harris' radio lying on the floor. My father decided to shut down the chamber after that. He always said that some places hold onto their anger and pain, and maybe, just maybe, they don't want to let it go. He retired soon after, but he never forgot the haunted look in Harris' eyes when they finally found him weeks later, wandering the woods miles away, whispering about the chair that wouldn't let him leave. In my years as a prison nurse, I've seen a lot, but nothing compares to what I experienced in cell block D. Block D was reserved for the most dangerous inmates. It was the oldest part of the prison, and the walls seemed to groan with the weight of the years and the misery they had witnessed. One of the cells in Block D was permanently shut. It was known as Death's Door. No one knew exactly what had happened there, but everyone knew the stories. The inmate who had once occupied it, Victor Malone, was said to have gone mad. They found him one morning, clawing at the walls, screaming about shadows that wouldn't leave him alone. He died soon after, his eyes wide open, staring at something no one else could see. One night, during a routine check, I passed by Death's Door and heard a soft humming sound coming from inside the sealed cell. It was an old tune, something hauntingly familiar. I called for backup, thinking it was some sort of prank, but the humming continued, growing louder, more insistent. When the guards arrived and pried open the sealed door, the humming stopped. The cell was empty, save for a strange mark on the wall that hadn't been there before, a handprint, smeared in a dark, rust-colored stain. One of the older guards, a man who'd been there since Malone's time, went pale when he saw it. He whispered, almost to himself, "That's Victor's mark. He's still here, trying to get out." No one goes near Death's Door now, not even the bravest of the guards. It remains sealed, and the humming has stopped. But sometimes, when the prison is quiet and the night is still, you can still hear the soft echoes of that haunting tune, as if Victor is still there, trapped between worlds, forever marking the walls of the cell.